Iran, Russia, China conduct joint live fire naval exercises in the Gulf of Oman in the Indian Ocean, a clear message to Trump. We also have reports from Press TV now, which say China has dispatched several advanced destroyers toward Iranian waters as Iran, Russia, and China prepare to hold joint naval drills near the Strait of Hormuz on Sunday. Now, I say don't believe it until you see it. Well, we're kind of beginning to see it. We're beginning to see some movement, and that is crazy. At the point in time when everyone is, moment by moment, second by second, waiting, watching each and every night Iran time to see if the U.S. will take action, if Israel will take action, China and Russia apparently are saying, so what? We have live fire military drills to do. One of the big ideas that Trump has is to, apparently this is being reported, to do a maritime blockade around Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this is a really stupid idea. I guess some of these, four-star generals have convinced Trump that Iran is the equivalent of Venezuela. Therefore, no fear, we can do a maritime blockade and stop the shipment of their oil just like we did unto Venezuela. Now, anyone who believes that would not only have to be naive, they would have to be extremely stupid, that these things are somehow equivalent, okay? Iran is a behemoth. Iran is a much stronger military power than Venezuela. Iran has their own domestic, military industrial complex, if you will. It's far less nefarious than the military industrial complex we think of in the United States. But yes, you would have to be very stupid to believe that. In fact, if you look at Russia, if you look at their Geranium 2 and 3 drones that they're using to take out multi-million-dollar, HIMARS systems in Ukraine, these are effectively Iranian drones, Shahed drones that they have, they have tinkered with and made more suitable to the conditions in Ukraine. So Iran really is a major power. They are technologically advanced. They have thousands upon tens of thousands upon tens of thousands of munitions, missiles, drones, naval drones, and really interesting missiles, which we'll discuss here in a second, at their disposal to utilize in a situation like this. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look here, because a maritime blockade would be an absolute mess. But maybe that's what some in Israel or some in the U.S. deep state really want. Iran, in response to these threats of a potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz via the doing of a U.S. blockade, maritime blockade, has announced that actually, no, they will be closing the Strait of Hormuz first. It is, albeit the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz. This measure is being taken to showcase what can happen if Iran treats the upcoming U.S. attacks as an all-out war. All right, now what is going on here is actually far more interesting than the headline. As we all know, Iran does possess the capability to sink U.S. Navy aircraft carriers in a war. Back in 2025, there were military analysis analyses done in the United States stating that a simple swarm of Iranian missiles and drones could sink a U.S. aircraft carrier by overwhelming force and overwhelming its defenses. Ships would likely stay further out to sea rather than operate close to shore. Okay, so some people have pointed this out, that the only way in which the U.S. could operate in some sort of a long-term conflict in and around Iran is if, in fact, they operate from afar. And that also leads to the conclusion that many, myself included, are inclined to believe that in the 12-day war, the U.S. did not fly B-2 bombers over Iran. In fact, they use naval assets, in particular submarines, from afar to do the damage that they did at the Iranian nuclear sites. But what is even more interesting, and I guess concerning for the United States, regarding these naval drills from the IRGC in the Strait of Hormuz, I guess it would be in the Sea of Oman, is not that they're happening, but in fact that there are reports take this with a grain of salt, that Russia and China will be participating. Okay, not sure if this is really happening. This is from German. But if Russia and China are shifting naval forces in the exact U.S. fleet assembling area, Iran will get the exact coordinates to strike those ships. Now, it's not that they necessarily need it. Iran has satellites up in the air now, thanks to Russia, right? The Russian, or maybe it was Chinese. It was Russian, right? The Russian rocket launcher boosted Iranian satellites, domestically produced satellites, up into the sky, into orbit, and they are now monitoring the situation, which is actually quite incredible, and it's been very useful for Iran thus far. Okay, so again, Iran, Russia, China conduct joint live fire naval exercises in the Gulf of Oman in the Indian Ocean, a clear message to Trump. Now, the reason why this is going around, I did a little simple fact check here, is because it was reported in Iranian media, and Al Jazeera circulated this story. Now, Al Jazeera and Iranian media, including Press TV, it would be very unusual for them to put out a story of this magnitude and it be not based in any sort of reality. That would be extremely unusual. I have followed all of these outlets for a very long time. But what we do know for certain is that, in fact, Iran at the least will be participating in these naval drills. Both the Iranian Navy and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC Navy, will soon conduct exercises. The IRGC Navy will be conducting live fire naval exercises in the eastern Strait of Hormuz, including areas where international shipping operates. Disruption is expected, and this exercise is likely to show Iran's capabilities in disrupting shipping should the United States attack. The Iranian Navy, in coordination with the Russian Navy and the People's Liberation Army, China, will be conducting naval exercises in the Sea of Oman. Notably, USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier was spotted there a few days ago, according to public flight tracking data showing U.S. Navy aircraft takeoffs in this area. Now, even the Institute for the Study of War has highlighted the fact that this might actually take place. So you now have Al Jazeera, you have Iranian media, and you have the Institute for the Study of War signifying that, yeah, we're beginning to hear that this might actually be taking place, okay? Iranian media outlets circulated a January 29th Al Jazeera report that claimed that the Iranian Navy will hold joint military exercise with the People's Republic of China and Russia in the Sea of Oman and the Indian Ocean in the coming days. The reports did not specify whether Artesh or the IRGC Navy will participate in the exercise. Iran and the PRC and Russia have held annual naval exercises in the Gulf of Oman in recent years, usually in the month of March. Russian and Chinese media have not confirmed the exercise at the time of this writing. Now, it would be early for them to conduct these exercises, right? But it wouldn't be unprecedented. This has happened before. It doesn't always happen in the month of March. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. What we do know for certain is that this badass Iranian ship, which I'm sure many of you have seen, the IRGC Navy ship, Martyr Soleimani, is being spotted in the waters of the Persian Gulf right now, out and about. All right. So that one is out there. I love this ship. It's like a James Bond villain ship. I actually love this ship so much. Every time I see videos of it, it's so base. Anyway, so that one is out and about. Iran has urged oil tankers and other commercial vessels to use southern bounds of the lanes, which may lead to a temporary restriction in maritime traffic. And we also have reports from Press TV now, which say China has dispatched several advanced destroyers toward Iranian waters as Iran, Russia, and China prepare to hold joint naval drills near the Strait of Hormuz on Sunday. Now, I say don't believe it until you see it. Well, we're kind of beginning to see it. We're beginning to see some movement, and that is crazy. At the point in time when everyone is moment by moment, second by second, waiting, watching each and every night Iran time to see if the U.S. will take action, if Israel will take action. China and Russia apparently are saying, so what? We have live fire military drills to do. Wow. Right around where these U.S. boats are going to be. So this draws the question, folks. Will the U.S. delay? Will they not delay? right? If they do have plans to do this, which I think we all know they have plans to do it, right? Will they delay? Will they not delay? If they do a maritime blockade, right? Will Russian and Chinese vessels be escorting Iranian ships through the blockade, running the blockade? That's a possibility. As insane as it sounds, that is a possibility. Russian and Chinese military ships trying to run the blockade, protecting Iranian ships, oil vessels, right? You know, anything could happen here, and none of this is unprecedented, right? You all remember Soviet ships were protecting Cuban vessels, if I'm not mistaken. It was ships en route to Cuba or something like that. And that was at the time of the very heavy U.S. blockade under Kennedy. And U.S. military advisors were telling Kennedy to bomb the Soviet ships. He said, bomb the Soviet ships. What do you mean? I can't do that. That's going to be World War III. He didn't do that. He called the Soviets. The Soviets called off the running of the blockade. They went home and they struck a deal. So this could actually be a very effective approach, although I don't think that I know Iran doesn't need Chinese and Russian vessels to help them run the blockade. They don't need that, but it would be a lot of added pressure, added weight, and it would be a much bigger decision if the U.S. tried to do something. I mean, that would be World War III at that moment if they struck one of those ships. So that is very interesting. Iranian army spokesperson says American aircraft carriers have a serious weakness against missiles. You'll find out about that later. That's from Iranian army spokesperson. Iran unveils underwater missile tunnels, warns Strait of Hormuz could be targeted. So it seems as though there's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress on the fact that the Strait of Hormuz could be where we see things tip off. Iran has revealed a network of underwater missile tunnels, warning that the Strait of Hormuz would not remain safe if the country were attacked amid escalating tensions with the United States. Footage aired on Iranian state television showed IRGC Navy Commander Alireza Tangsiri inside the submarine missile facilities, displaying rows of cruise missiles reportedly capable of striking targets over 1,000 kilometers or 621 miles away with smart guidance systems. Tangsiri said that the tunnels were developed to confront U.S. vessels operating in the Gulf and Sea of Oman, emphasizing that Iranian forces are prepared to respond to threats at any level and any geography. So these would hypothetically be used if, in fact, the U.S. attempts to do a blockade. You would have these, effectively Iranian submarines, which would be patrolling alongside, I would imagine, Iranian warships. So you'd have warships, destroyer class, ships, something like that. You would have submarines, and you would have whatever vessels Iran is trying to get through the blockade. And the U.S. would, in effect, be forced to take the first shot. If they did take the first shot, immediately Iran would respond with those submarines. Now let's take a look at this. So here's a look at some of the assets that Iran has at their disposal to target any sort of American naval threat, okay? The U.S. Navy is massing ships near Iran, but Tehran's newer anti-ship missiles designed to make any naval aggression painfully expensive. So not just the submarines do they have, or the tunnels as they call them, right? The naval tunnel systems. They also have mass-produced anti-ship missile bastion, and U.S. ships in range are vulnerable based on reverse-engineered Chinese CA-02 design with enhanced radar and range variants. So all of these missiles are smart missiles. They are, we're living in 2026 in Iran. The United States still doesn't have hypersonic missiles, by the way. Based on, so produce independently under sanctions, a sustainable missile ecosystem hard to cripple, integrated across ships, coastal batteries, air platforms, and IRGC systems, complicating U.S. naval suppression. Not only that, but we also have this, Iran sniper missiles, okay? U.S. warships are under threat from the Qatar cruise missiles at just 3 to 5 meters above sea level. This gives even the most advanced radars only 10 to 15 seconds of reaction time. Its range is 200 to 300 kilometers and fully covers the Strait of Hormuz. The 200-kilogram armor-piercing warhead is specifically designed to penetrate carrier flight decks and superstructures. Each missile costs around $500,000. In contrast, a single carrier runs $13 billion, with escorts adding $2 to $4 billion each. One saturation salvo could erase decades of investment. Launched from trucks and trailers disguised as civilian vehicles, the Qatar turns Iran's 1,800-kilometer coastline into hidden batteries that are nearly impossible to destroy. It is one of the core pieces of Iran's A2 air defense strategy. A2AD. Okay, now, this is, by the way, why, yes, China, the PLA Navy, is building up a massive navy, but not so much with the aircraft carriers, because it's out of date. Anyways, I would not be surprised if we had full-on nuclear surprise from Iran. Like, if they all started, posting these hype edits of the B-2 bombers and whatnot, Diego Garcia saying how they're going to steamroll Iran, and then Iran, drops a video of Khamenei with, some Kim Jong-un, edit with a nuclear bomb, I wouldn't be surprised. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.